Bourbon Barkeep, my name's Curtis. Thank you for tuning in once again. Elijah Craig, Barrel Proof A125. How does it stack up against last year's C batch? And we're going to compare it to the Larceny A batch this year because not everybody can buy both bottles. So let's see what bottle, or neither. We'll find out. Elijah Craig, Barrel Proof, has it taken steps down in the age department? Yes. Has it taken steps down in the proof department? Sadly, yes. But when you're talking about the specs, it's still one of the best values out there. So we're going to put on our rose-colored glasses and take a look at a 10-year, 7-month-old, 118.2 barrel-proof bourbon from a legacy distillery, that is Heaven Hill, putting out Elijah Craig, A125. And if you're unfamiliar with that, that's the first batch, January 2025. So here we are, A batch. Last year's, I remember not being super pumped about, but it's a new year. It's new beginnings. We're all allowed to turn a page. And if you haven't turned the page, still time, Spring, let's get this on the nose while you start to work on yourself and look inward. This is going to be a journey episode for you, and I'm excited to see where you land at the end of this. All right, on the nose. Fruitier, much fruitier. Wow. A lot of berries, like red berries. We'll throw in a blackberry, but mainly strawberry and raspberry. Some caramel, some nougat kind of coming out there. Love good nougat scent in there. Couldn't tell you this was an Elijah Craig barrel proof. I could tell you that. At least for some of the past ones, they tend to have that rich, dark oak to it. For being 10 years, 7 months, we said. It's not coming off young, just not that rich oak that you tend to find in the Elijah Craig barrel proofs. Kind of trail mixy. You got the dried berries in there, maybe a dried cherry in there, a little bit of the nut coming out, but yeah, this is bright red fruits, some nougat, some maybe salted caramel, if you will. All right, not something that I expected coming in here, but let's get on the palate, see how she translates. A lot more peanut, salted caramel, a lot nuttier on the palate that I did not get on the nose at all. Definitely that salted caramel. That is really, really there. Does that fruit translate? Doesn't seem like it. At least not sip one. Caramel is ramped up into a nice richness, maybe even like a toffee, if you will. Hangs around on the tongue for a while. It is pretty drying. The finish at 118, talking about a barrel proof bourbon, drinks a little under, not much, but 115 can be pretty smooth. So a couple notches above that. Ultimately, I don't feel it a ton in the chest at the moment, but all right. Sip 2, let's get a little deeper in there. Sip 2 ramped up a bit more. I think sip 1, not really sure what was happening. Sip 2, it got better. A little more oak came out, at least from what sip 1 was. A little more rye spice actually came out to where didn't pick up a ton of that. Salt died down a little bit and brought out that oak, that rye, a little more chocolate on the finish, which was nice, but it's good. For whatever reason, that sip 1 was a lot easier than what sip 2 was. Sip 2, I feel a little more in the chest, and I would say it drinks at that 118 to 120 proof now, which typically it gets easier. So don't really know what's happening inside my body, and there's a little panic going on inside, but ultimately it's good, it's smooth, Is it one of the best batches that they've ever put out? Probably not when you have monsters like C924. But ultimately, you got to compare what's in front of you. Now, let's take a look at something that's in front of us with the Larceny A-Batch 125, and let's revisit the past. We've talked about drudging up our past. Here we are. Let's drudge it up and get a compare and see how do we stack up against a previous batch that I've seen on shelves just recently, and then against a rival. Same mother. Same distillery, same mother. We'll see. Sibling rivalry. Let's get it on. For poured up, we got some siblings out here. Will the middle child be forgotten again? We shall see. We have over here the C924 that came in, because it's the past, 129 proof, 11 years, 0 months, just 11 years on the dot. How does it compare against the newest batch? And if you like the C924, should you pull the trigger? Let's find out. C924 seems to go into more of just the traditional realm to what you were expecting from Elijah Craig. I believe that I ranked the B batch best of last year, with C close behind. A was a different story. This one, you do have a lot of barrel char, a lot more oak influence, I feel like, at least on the C batch. I understand the ages are close on this one, but there's a lot more age that comes out on the C batch of last year. Your brown sugars, your caramel, and your vanillas are there. At least for this pour, there's like a mustiness coming out, like a damp basement. And I don't mean that in a pure negative, just there's a mustiness to it. Let's get on the palate. Ooh. Peanut butter, cinnamon, oak, vanilla. That's pretty good. There's a nice richness, there's an oiliness to this that I'm going to revisit the A batch. I don't think that A had that. There's a rich brown sugar to it. There's a salty peanut at the end of it that pushes me away a little bit. Maybe even like a dark chocolate, like that kind of a bitter dark chocolate kind of coming out. That's not bad. All right, let's revisit the A batch. A loses what that saltiness was. It brings forward this vanilla custard and berries that is starting to kind of ramp up when you're comparing it from what this brown sugar oak bomb is to what A is bringing to the table. You either want brown sugar, oak, caramel, and vanilla, or you want berries, caramel, and nougat, a little bit of leather kind of mixed in there. This one, much smoother, much more approachable, to where if someone was newer to the barrel proof piece and they were like, hey, I've heard so much about these Elijah Craigs, I think the A125 is a really nice entry point into that. Now, let's head to the youngest bottle, sticking on the sibling train, if you will. This is coming in 6 to 8 years old. These typically run $60, $65, to where Elijah Craig, $75, $80. Still great value for your money in terms of the specs. Yes, some batches go up, some go down, but here we are. Let's see, how does Larceny A125 stack up against the Elijah Craig A125? Quick spec check. We have your 125 proof versus your A batch of that, what did we say, 118.2. So you got more age, a little more proof over here. Larceny going to be a weeded. I got to appeal to all the people that haven't seen the review, which hopefully there's a card that flashes up. Man, it's wild. Like when you're doing these back to back, what gets emphasized, which is crazy. This has vanilla, a lot of caramel, but that vanilla is very strong. That sweetness comes roaring through. When you're comparing them back to back, and I know that this is influenced by what these previous glasses were, that wheat, kind of a grassiness starts to come out, to where I did not get that when I was drinking the Larceny Solo, but there is still a velvety to the Larceny that they did a really great job with this A125. Thick vanilla custard, red fruits coming out on this palate where it came out on the nose on this one. That Larceny is very good. The drink's smooth at 125 being that wheated version. I think that they drink almost the same proof. Little cinnamon spice on the tongue coming out. This one's going to be tough. I did a quick revisit. I didn't want this to be a 25-minute episode. This one's tough. This one's splitting hairs. This is definitely going to boil down to preference. I think I love the nose on the A125 of the Elijah Craig. Close second of what Larceny is bringing to the table. Oh, I think my preference is probably the Elijah Craig by a point or two. What Larceny is pumping out is extremely close. If you want more vanilla with your dark fruits, I think you're here. If you want more baking spice, nougat, caramel with that vanilla, I think you have to go with the Elijah Craig. But it's splitting hairs. It's much closer than what it used to be. I know with the Larceny C batches last year, it beat the Elijah Craig C batch. These have always been pretty close, but typically I lean the Elijah Craig, and I think I'm going to do that here. But I think it's a credit to Larceny. If you want to save the $10, this is a very, very good batch. The Elijah Craig, it's going to be a very different batch than what you're used to. I would actually be curious how this stacks up with the new Green River Foolproof. It's going to be younger, so I don't think that it can bring some of that oak and cedar to the table. But in terms of those berries and caramel and nougat, it did remind me of just a little bit of the new Green River Foolproof, that 118 proof one, not the 117 proof batch that they popped out. So let's get into scoring. Let's wrap this up. I think that you can't go wrong with either batch. I hope these tasting notes helped a little bit, but ultimately, scoring wise, we have our census categories. Elijah Craig always seems to be firmly in the good stuff. I hope they don't get too comfortable, because if the whiskey budget allows it, I do want to put these against a private barrel. Those specs are coming down low enough to where these private barrels, I understand what they used to be, what they are today. It's getting alarmingly close to what they're putting out as their barrel proof to the general public. It's getting a little annoying, but ultimately it's still great juice. So let's get a score on the senses. We're just going to go 77. I think it's firmly in the good stuff. This isn't one of the top batches from the last handful of years. I think it's really approachable for someone getting into that barrel proof piece of it, but it's good. I mean, I don't hate having it on my shelf by any means. Now we get into a little bang for the buck. What did I get for my $75 at this point? We can take specs and proof into consideration. 10 year and a half, if we go with the sibling, if you will. 118.2 proof. It's great. There's cheaper stuff out there, like I mentioned with that Green River Foolproof at this point, but ultimately $75 for this bottle. We'll just go 70. We'll keep it even. I don't regret it. I definitely got my money's worth. If you told me it was 80, yeah, I'm probably still buying them. I love what Elijah Craig does. I get the sourness kind of behind some of the specs that they've been pumping out at the same time, but for the bottle, when I'm tasting, it's really damn good at $75, and it continues to be a buy, and I don't fault people for just continually to purchase them. That was a tough one. This stacked up so much closer than what I thought it was. I hope it helped, and if you buy both, welcome to the whiskey buying problem. Like, subscribe. Thank you all for joining in. It does mean a lot when you're sitting in a basement alone, talking to a phone, and you got people out there that believe enough in you to subscribe, let alone like and comment. So join in. It does help the grind, if you will. So It is appreciated, and I genuinely cannot thank you enough for continuing to tune in, and sometimes I don't know why, but thank you again, and we'll see what next week has.